His thick golden hair was always fixed like a cresting wave, and his blue eyes gleamed with a dangerous light, like he'd set the Elfinhorn forest aflame on a whim because he could get away with it. "Unlike you," Alexander said, standing straighter because the only thing Hans was self-conscious of was his height. "I decided not to spend hours dressing up like a tinsel soldier." Hans flashed a crooked smile. His tanned cheeks were dusted with golden freckles from his frequent riding through the evergreen fields. He reached out and placed his long index finger on Alexander's shoulder. Alexander tried to reel back, but too late. The air sparked with Hans's magic. Blessed with the alchemical ability to transform matter, Hans used his saint-given gift to turn his youngest brother's suit completely gold to match his own. The silk threads of Alexander's frock shimmered from red to gold like the scales of a fish. He grabbed Hans by the front of his collar and slammed him against the nearest wall. "Fix it! Now!" "I'm merely proving a point, brother," Hans said, laughing. Alexander growled. "Fix it!" "Your sense of humor is always horrid this time of year." "Enough!" Wilhelm's baritone command was laced with real threat as he rounded the corner. In moments, Alexander let go of Hans, and Hans returned Alexander's ceremonial suit back to its deep blood hue. Wilhelm and Alexander shared the marbled amber eyes of their patron saint, perhaps the only trait that assured Alexander he was indeed his deceased father's son, and not the bastard some at the palace liked to whisper about. The future king had opted for the more traditional ceremonial garb. Trousers fitted to his brawny legs, a fur-lined cape fastened at his throat with a glistening diamond. His muscular torso was bare, showcasing the mark of the saint, an inky brand that started at the centers of his palms and snaked up his arms like wild ivy and thorns, winding over his shoulders, his pectorals, and stopped just above his heart. The mark had taken root in Wilhelm on the very day their father passed, and slowly grew every time he used his gifts. On the night of the solstice, the mark would be complete. The heirs of King Nicholas XV stood in the hall of the Grand Palace, glowering at one another. Wilhelm, the firstborn, the crown prince, the true heir of the mark of the saint. Hans, middleborn, golden son, and gifted with the power of alchemy. And then there was the youngest, the sword of the realm, the spare, useless as the ornate sword dangling at his hip. Sometimes Alexander wondered how they shared the same blood, the blood of St. Nicholas of Myra, a man who had left the known world to create a hidden paradise, free of sin, free of the evils of humanity. The eternal winter kingdom had been his ancestors' dream, and Alexander and his brothers were the bearers of that legacy. "Where is your future queen?" Hans asked, adjusting his silk cravat. Wilhelm's eyebrows shot up in surprise, like he hadn't considered the whereabouts of his wife that day. "Fussing at Everlane, I'm sure." "I'm sure," Hans muttered. Wilhelm had their father's cold smile, sharp like the curve of a scythe. "I thank you for your concern." Even Hans had common sense to not respond. "Now listen to me very carefully," Wilhelm said, positioning himself before the seam of the doors. He turned his head and held Alexander's irritated stare. "Do not embarrass me the way you did at father's funeral." All Alexander had done was set their father's palomino free. How could he have known the stubborn horse was going to ride right into the cathedral during Wilhelm's speech? "How about I behave?" Alexander said. "The day you give a speech that doesn't bore me to death." Wilhelm cleared his throat and stared straight ahead. "You're so glib for someone born a mistake." Hans looked at his feet while anger sliced through Alexander. He'd grown up hearing that. Mistake. Spare. Useless. After all, he was...